Hello, and thank you for clicking on the video. Today's video is going to be on Field Training Officer Program, the FTO program. I thought that it would be a good idea to create this video because some of you who decide to get into law enforcement, part of that job qualifications, you'll have to pass a Field Training Officer program. And so before we get started with that, I wanted to talk to you about a few things called probation. When you first get hired in law enforcement, this is assuming you passed the background, you passed your medical, you passed the interviews, and boom, you're wearing the uniform and you're in the patrol car. You're going to be on probation. And probation is a very dangerous time. It's like you're walking on eggshells. The department can dismiss you with or without cause. That means that they can just not like you and let you go, and they could use the excuse that you weren't a good fit for the department. So it's not about being right or wrong. It's about laying low under the radar until you get off probation, and then you'll have your union that will stand behind you when you get in trouble. So I wanted to kind of preface the Field Training Officer video with that information. Some agencies you're on probation for a year. Other agencies you're on probation for a year and a half. If you choose to have an agency put you through the academy, which lasts 6 months, the police academy, will count towards that time in probation. So if you have a year probation, and I mentioned this in previous videos, and you spend 6 months in the academy, and then when you come out you do 4 months in FTO, you only have 2 more months on probation, and hopefully you keep your nose clean, listen to your supervisors, follow policy, and you'll be fine. So let's get started with Field Training Officer, FTO program. In California, when I was a police officer, we followed the San Jose Police Department's Field Training Officer manual. And when I was a training officer, that's the manual I used to sign off trainees in specific areas. So the first day on Field Training Officer, your training officer will tell you to forget everything you learned in the academy and to just pay attention to what the field training, the FTO, is going to tell you. This is very important because you need to learn how different people act in different law enforcement positions. Some officers are by the book, other officers are a little bit more relaxed. Some officers are outgoing, other officers are kind of introverts and don't like to speak. And so when you work 8 hours, 11 hours, sometimes it's a long shift. So what happens when you first start the Field Training Officer program? You are shown the Field Training Officer manual, and that's every single police call you're going to handle while you're working in law enforcement. Your alarm calls, your domestic violence calls, your theft, burglary, traffic accidents, traffic enforcement, you name it, the Field Training Officer manual will cover that. And so the first few days when you're in the car, you'll be watching your field training officer, and then eventually you take over the wheel and you're running the police car, and you'll be again adapting to different officers. And so at the end of your shift, and this is what I want you to focus on as the heart of this presentation, and this is what I tell my classes, you'll go over what's called a DOR, Daily Observation Report. And DORs can be emotionally draining and at times emotionally devastating, because when you first start a training officer program, the training officer will ding you for every little thing. And so the list of things you did wrong during that police patrol shift is going to way outnumber the things you did right. So for example, on the first day, things you did right was you showed up, you were wearing a uniform, and you were ready to go. Maybe those are the 3 things. And then the things you did wrong were you portrayed bad officer safety. You weren't paying attention to where you were positioning your gun when you were interviewing a suspect. You failed to ask the suspect to show the hands. You didn't complete your reports on time. You failed to submit a form. You don't ask enough questions. I mean, it could be a whole list of things. And when you watch this interview or this video here, I hope that it prepares you emotionally to get emotionally beaten up, because that's what's going to happen when you go through the Field Training Officer program. They're not going to be there to be your friends, do a lot of hand holding. Another thing that I want to caution you about, when I was a field training officer, I would always tell the trainee, hey, you need to keep me posted on everything you do. So I don't want you, while you're on probation, going out to parties. I don't want you going out of town drinking without talking to me first. And I want you to keep me posted on everything that you're doing. And the majority of them listen, and we got along just fine. But others didn't listen, and they ended up failing my program and eventually being let go of the department. And that's something you don't want to happen. You want to be able to adapt and conform. But I know a lot of you that I speak to as a professor, and especially millennials that are so used to everything going well for them. When they had a problem in school when they were younger, the parent went to school and argued with everybody they could to protect them. And, that's just not what's going to happen when you get into law enforcement. You may have the luck to get placed with a field training officer like me, who basically wanted you to pass and would do everything to get you to pass. Or you may get placed with an officer who hates his life, who's maybe going through a divorce, who hates people, who hates the job. And so it's going to be an adjustment for you to spend 8, 10, 12 hours in the patrol car with this person. The main thing you got to do, though, is you got to follow directions. Learn early to study the police department guidelines, policies, and procedures. Know what you can and can't do. When can you pat down a female? When can you handcuff a person? When you get dispatched to an alarm call, what corner of the building are you going to take? Also, learn your directions early. When you're driving your own private car, what direction are you traveling? Are you going north, south, east, west? Are you going northbound, southbound? Police codes. You have to memorize all the police codes when you get into law enforcement. Best way I'll tell you is to take 10 at a time and then test yourself. So 10 at a time, memorize them, test yourself, now you know, move forward, and so forth. Some of you are taking police college courses, and in these courses we talk about different things like burglary, which is 459 of the California Penal Code. We hear about things like assault and battery, 240, 242. When you become a police officer and you're on patrol and you hear the code 459 in progress, you got to know that's a burglary in progress. And then you got to know your response, 1 through 6. Is it going to be a priority 1, lights and siren? If it's a felony in progress, yeah, there's going to be a lights and siren, unless your department says that they don't respond to emergency lights and siren to in-progress burglary calls. I mean, again, department policy controls it. In the academy, they'll teach you the basics, but when you get in the actual patrol car, your training officer is going to be telling you, hey, this is not acceptable. Yes, you can do this. No, you can't do that. At the beginning of your shift, and I know I'm bouncing all over the place, but it's to keep you alert, to keep you paying attention to what I'm telling you. At the beginning of your shift, okay, you got to get there early. This is not a job that you get there 5 minutes till and then you hope that everything goes well. No, you got to get there like I did, an hour early, 45 minutes early. Why? You want to polish up your uniform. You want to use a lint roller to get all those little lint things off your uniform. You got to make sure you put a clean uniform on. You got to make sure you polish your boots and you polish your belt, and you got to make sure you check your gun, right? You got to make sure you load your magazines and that everything checks out. Check your handcuffs. Make sure they're not double locked. And then be in briefing early, like on time. So if briefing starts at 2:30, you're there by 2:25 at the very latest, in uniform, ready to go. Your police patrol bag should have all the forms that you're going to need while you're working on patrol. In my department, the last department that I worked for, a large agency, once we left the department, we were not allowed to come back for forms. I mean, a lot of times we just met with our beat partners if we were missing a form, but it's important that you have the right forms in your police bag. And like in my case, I carried my department policies and procedures manual with me at all times. Sometimes I had questions and I would refer to it. Other officers thought it was a stupid thing to carry the department policies and procedures with you, but I always felt it was important, because when you get into law enforcement, you basically start realizing that you're working with a bunch of people with type A personalities. And I say this in class as well. You will be working with sharks. It's like swimming with sharks. Police officers, deputy sheriffs, California High Patrol, these are type A personality people who are out there to catch, bad guys. And so if they're out there to catch bad guys, when things are boring, sometimes they're out to get coworkers in trouble. So don't ever confuse your coworkers for your best friends, etc. Because let me tell you, if you ever lose your job in law enforcement, if you ever get let go on probation, if you ever get disciplined, you will see these sharks, these type A personality people completely disappear. They won't be standing by you. There's no, blue line like you guys here. Don't get me wrong. We have a lot of camaraderie in law enforcement, and we take really good care of ourselves. But if you're working in an agency and your beat partner, who you think is your best friend, turns you in because you obviously violated policy, and now you're getting disciplined, don't be surprised if you pick up the phone to call him someday just to vent, and he doesn't answer your calls like for a month, or he doesn't act like he was acting. It's because when you get hired by a law enforcement agency, these are called coworkers. And it is important that you realize this early on. I can't tell you enough how many students of mine are now working in law enforcement, and they'll call me and say, oh my gosh, I remember you telling us about this in class. And so during the field training officer program, memorize your department policies, learn the radio codes early, right? Minimize the distractions. When you're in a police car and a call comes in, I don't care if you're in the middle of the best story you want to tell your training officer. The second your call sign comes up, mine was MY61, and I'd be having a great conversation with a beat partner or somebody, a ride-along person, citizen, and my call sign would come up on the radio, and I would stop talking, automatically start listening. It's important that you're always alert, and these are things that if you don't follow my advice, at the end of your shift, you're going to have this daily observation report list that's going to be huge, right? Tremendous. Another thing, be careful what you tell your field training officer. What I mean by this is too much honesty is too much. I recall, and I'm going to share a funny story with you. I recall I had a trainee, older trainee, and he had gas problems. I mean, it was always, he had gas. You think you know what I'm saying. And if we're in a patrol car alone together, he had to either roll down the windows because he had gas, or he had to go outside. And so I learned to start asking him early, like when we left the station, hey, do you need to go to the bathroom? No, I don't need to go to the bathroom. You sure? Yeah. And so then one time I asked him, because I could tell he was having gas, and that's just normal. And some of you guys are laughing as you hear this, but that's real. People have gas depending on the food they eat, right? Anyway, this officer ignored my request when I said, hey, do you want to go to the bathroom? He said, no, we got dispatched to a traffic accident. Okay, we got dispatched to a traffic accident. And when you're dispatched to a traffic accident, sometimes you're out there directing traffic for a long time. And that's what happened. And this officer had gas out there. And I'm just going to say it. He, went number 2 on his uniform pants. One of the gas episodes he had forced it out. And I remember him coming up to me all embarrassed and saying, hey, I don't know how to say this, but this is what I just did. And I said, well, see that restaurant over there? Why don't you walk over there and use some paper towels to, put a diaper on yourself? Some of you guys are cracking up about this. But, and so these are the things, personal hygiene is a big thing. And so back to what I was telling you, are you completely honest with your training officer? I say use caution when completely honest. Like, you and your girlfriend had an argument at home right before you went to patrol, and you get to work, and your training officer may say, hey, how's things with you and your girlfriend Kelly? And if you follow my advice, you'll say, they're good. I just saw her this morning, she went to work, they're good. And then those of you who won't pay attention to what I'm going to say, you'll say, oh man, we just had an argument this morning. She says that she hates the shift work that I'm working. She doesn't know about the fact that I'm a police officer. I'm always gone. I'm in court, whatever. And so you think that you're being honest telling this to your training officer. Your training officer hears that you're not emotionally prepared for this job. And that's what the training officer just heard. Your story is telling him you're not emotionally prepared, because you're supposed to leave your baggage at home. You're not supposed to bring the baggage to work, because then that's how people get hurt and they get injured, and officers violate policy. And so let's just say at the end of the shift, you handle a call and you mess things up on the call and you totally screwed it up. And so now on the daily observation report, your training officer is going to say that you're having relationship problems at home that appear to be having an impact on your ability to function as a peace officer. And now the first time that happens, you'll be like, oh my gosh, Brian told me this on the video, right? So to finish this off, I want to tell you a few things about the Field Training Officer program. Is a 1 through 7 scale. When you first start off, you're going to be getting 1s and 2s. You're not responding to training. You don't know how to handle the call type of thing. So don't panic about getting those 1s and 2s. Now, the program is usually 4 months long. So if you're like 2.5, 3 months into it and you're still getting 1s and 2s, this is a critical, super important thing that you got to pay attention to, because you're heading to getting fired is what that means. If you're getting 1s and 2s on your 3rd month in the training program, that is an indication that you may not make it, and that before the 4 months is up, they're going to dismiss you. And basically one day you come to work and they'll ask you to turn in your badge and then turn in your equipment, and then they'll walk you out of the department, like I've seen this happen with other officers. So I know some of you, this is your dream. This is what you want to become, a peace officer. You want to go out there and, catch bad guys, enforce crime, drive fast, be recognized, be a public servant, etc. But field training is such an important component of you getting past all these little steps in order to finally be out on your own. So don't ignore these things that I'm telling you, thinking that, hey, it's going to get better. No, it only gets better if you improve it. So if you're having 1s and 2s, again, in the beginning, that's fine. Maximum is 7, but if you're operating at 4s and 5s, you're actually able to be released. So I don't want you panicking, thinking, wait a minute, what if I can't memorize everything in 7 months? Again, if you're getting 4s and 5s, some 6, you're going to be fine. And what happens is that long daily observation DOR list that I told you in the very first day or first week of FTO is going to start shrinking to the point where you only have a few things. Maybe you forgot to fuel, maybe so-and-so. So I'm going to continue making a few more of these. I know this lasted a long time. There's other things like searching cars, checking weapons, checking your emergency lights equipment that are in line with the Field Training Officer program. But I hope you got some good things out of this video that will help you pass the Field Training Officer. And let me tell you one final thing. At the very end of it, once you finish the Field Training Officer, the FTO program, and you're in the car, you're going to be a bit nervous, which is normal. But man, it's going to be like night and day. All of a sudden, you're your own boss, and you're not going to have to put up with people, like I mentioned earlier, that have gas or have, FTO that smells or, whatever. And so things are going to get much better. And then once that happens, the very day, the first week you get released on your own, you will think about these videos and you'll think, oh my gosh, I applied what Brian here told me to apply, and it worked. All right, I'm going to cut it short. Long video, but lots of good information for you. Take care, continue sending the questions, and I'll take care of you because I want to share all the information that I can so that you can become successful, okay? Have a good one.